friends, today we are going to do chapter number 3 of the novel Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dicken. The name of the chapter that we are going to do is He Runs Away. Who runs away? Oliver Twist, yes. During the months which followed, Noah Claypole made life very unpleasant for Oliver because Mr. Sorberry tried to be his friend. Mrs. Sorberry was his enemy. Oliver's life was not comfortable. One day, Noah was very bad to Oliver. He pulled his hair hard and hurt his ears. He was trying to make Oliver cry. "How's your mother workhouse?" he said. "She's dead," replied Oliver. "Don't you say anything about her to me." "What?" cried Noah. "Don't be rude, workhouse. We all pity you, workhouse. But your mother was a bad woman." "You know she was." "What did you say?" asked Oliver, looking up quickly. "A bad woman, workhouse," repeated Noah. Red with anger, Oliver pushed over the chair and table, seized the much bigger boy by the neck, shook him and then threw him to the ground. "He will murder me," cried Noah. "Help, Mrs. Sorberry! Oliver has gone mad." Mrs. Sorberry came rushing into the kitchen. She held Oliver and scratched his face. Noah got up and hit him from behind. When they were tired and could tear and scratch and beat no longer, they cried Oliver to a dark room and shut him there. Mrs. Sorberry sat down and began to cry. "We might all have been murdered in our beds," she said. "But what shall we do? Mr. Sorberry is not at home. There's no man in the house. Run to Mr. Bumble. No, and tell him to come here at once." Noah found Mr. Bumble at the workhouse. "Oh, Mr. Bumble, sir!" cried Noah. Sir Oliver has." What?" asked Mr. Bumble with a look of pleasure in his eyes. "Not run away. He hasn't run away, has he, Noah?" "Not run away, sir, but he attacked me and tried to murder me, sir. And then he tried to murder Mrs. Sorberry, sir." Oh, the terrible pain! And Noah moved his body as if still suffering from Oliver's attack. "My poor boy," said Mr. Bumble. "I will come at once." He took his stick and set off with Mr. Noah to Mr. Sorberry's shop. He went to the dark room and said in a deep voice, "Oliver, let me out!" cried Oliver from the inside. "Do you know this voice, Oliver?" asked Mr. Bumble. "Yes," answered Oliver. "Aren't you afraid of it? Have you no fear while I speak?" "No," said Oliver in a courageous voice. This answer was so different from the one he expected to receive. Mr. Bumble was very surprised. He stood back from the door and looked at the others. "Oh, you know Mr. Bumble. He must be mad," said Mrs. Sorberry. "No good boy could speak to you like that." "He is not mad," said Mr. Bumble after a few moments. "Deep thought. The trouble is meat." "Meat? Mrs. Sorberry, meat?" said Mr. Bumble. You can have given him too much to eat. If you had fed him only on soup, as we did in the workhouse, this would never have happened. Dear, dear, said Mrs. Sorberry, this is the result of being generous. Leave him in there for a day or two, said Mr. Bumble. Give him nothing but soup in future, Mrs. Sorberry. He comes of a bad family. At this moment, Mr. Sorberry arrived. He wanted to be kind to Oliver, but when his wife began to cry, he felt forced to beat Oliver. He hit him hard and then shut him up in the dark room again. At night, Oliver was ordered upstairs to his bed in the shop. It was not until he was left alone in the silence of the shop that Oliver began to cry. He fell on his knees on the floor and hiding his face in his hands, he wept. For a long time he stayed like that, without moving. Then he opened the door and looked out. It was a cold, dark night. He shut the door, tied up his few clothes in a handkerchief, and sat down to wait for morning. When the first light of the day showed through the window, he opened the door. After one quick, frightened look around him, he closed the door behind him and was out in the open street. Oliver was out in the open street. Thank you, friends. Bye bye. Have a nice day.